Hey, what's going on, True Blazer fans? It's Tori, and welcome to another Monday Mailbag. Now, I did not record last week's Monday Mailbag because I was planning on immediately recording it after that Brooklyn Nets game, and then of course it went to double overtime, and then of course Nurkic went down with that injury, and I was not in the state of mind to be able to record a Monday Mailbag. So I'm going to be answering a couple questions that you guys gave me a couple weeks ago, and then we'll get back into the swing of things. So as always, leave your question down below and I will try and answer it next week, and then the mailbag after that will be after our first game in the postseason. I can't believe it's already April. So because we don't have many questions this week, I'm going to talk a bit about something that I've seen multiple posters bring up on multiple videos. Normally I would have saved this for the off season, that's what I was planning on doing, but I've seen enough of you guys bring it up that I'm just going to talk about it here. And that talking point is the possibility of us bringing back Rodney Hood, Seth Curry, and Enes Kanter, and why it's going to be hard to bring back more than one of those guys. To easily explain this, I have to start off by talking about the two different main ways that you can sign free agents in the NBA. First off, there's cap space. If you're under the salary cap line, you can sign players for whatever, just as long as you don't go over. A lot of you are probably also familiar with the mid-level exception, but there is two different versions of the mid-level exception. One is the taxpayer mid-level exception, which gives you about $5.5 million to sign free agents with. And then there's the full mid-level exception, which gives you a little bit less than $9 million to sign free agents with. And now, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the taxpayer mid-level exception is the exception you have to use if you go into the tax. It's kind of like that, but not quite. It's not necessarily if you go into the tax. There's a thing called a hard cap that's about $6 to $7 million more than the luxury tax line. So next year, the luxury tax is projected to be at $132 million, and the hard cap will be $138 to $139 million. Now, this hard cap doesn't exist for teams unless they either use the full mid-level exception, so they basically go over that $5.5 million mark using their mid-level exception money, or if they make a sign and trade and bring a player in that way. So in simpler terms, if you go over that taxpayer mid-level exception and go into your full mid-level exception, your salary cannot go over the hard cap for the rest of the year. The Blazers couldn't have a payroll more than $138 or $139 million. The second part of this picture is a thing called bird rights. There's three different types of bird rights. One is non-bird rights, which is for players that you've signed for only a year, or for a player that was on a one-year deal that got traded to you. Then there's early bird rights, which is a free agent that's been under a contract for their second year, or was traded while under a contract that was of 2 years length. And then there's bird rights, which is for free agents that have been under contract for 3 years or been traded on a contract that they've been under for 3 years. So a guy like CJ McCollum or Damian Lillard, if they became a free agent this summer, they'd have bird rights. Now, Zach Collins isn't going to be a free agent this summer, but let's hypothetically say he would be. He'd have early bird rights because this is his second season under contract. Then you have a guy like Enes Kanter who signed with Portland mid-season, and he's under non-bird rights. So with those rights is a certain level of which a re-signing team can sign that player up to without using cap space or a mid-level exception. So a guy making $4 million in the last year of his contract with early bird rights, you could pay him up to $7 million, and if you wanted to go over that, you'd have to use a mid-level exception. They basically wouldn't be your own free agent. So Seth Curry is only making around $3 million a year. He has non-bird rights. He can only make up to 120%, and that'll be around $4 million. He's going to make more than that. Enes Kanter signed for the league minimum, which was around $1 million. He can make 120% of that. He's going to make more than that for sure. Rodney Hood had to forfeit his bird rights because he signed a qualifying offer. And what a qualifying offer is when a rookie goes through their 4-year rookie contract, they become a restricted free agent. And then you have the possibility of them being signed to an offer sheet like Allen Crabbe was. If they don't sign an offer sheet or a new contract, they can sign a qualifying offer, which is basically a 1-year deal, and they become an unrestricted free agent after that. The team that keeps that player on that qualifying offer basically has his bird rights. That's what the Cavaliers does, but a condition of it is if they trade him, that player has to consent to the trade, and that player does not bring his bird rights over to his new team when he's traded. So that is why we do not have Rodney Hood's bird rights. Rodney Hood is technically a non-bird free agent for us, which means he can only make up to 120% of his previous salary, and that would be around $4 million a year. Rodney Hood is going to make more than that this summer. So basically, it's as if all three of those players are free agents from other teams, and we're either going to have to clear a bunch of cap space to re-sign them with cap space, or we're going to have to use mid-level exceptions. Now, I think those players are all going to make over $5.5 million a year, so to be able to re-sign one of them, I think we're going to have to open up our full mid-level exception. And what that means is we might have to make the decision to try and shed Myers Leonard's contract, Evan Turner's contract, or Maurice Harkless's contract to shed enough salary where we're able to re-sign one of those guys for the full mid-level exception and be able to stay under the hard cap that imposes. The Blazers' payroll without bringing back Jake Layman and Al-Farouq Aminu right now is $126 million next year. You're looking at maybe $7-8 million a year for Curry, Cantor, or Rodney Hood. That puts it at $134 million. Even if you let Aminu and Layman walk, which is a bad decision in my opinion, you're still going to have to replace them on the roster, and you're going to have a hard time staying under that hard cap. So what it comes down to is, in order to keep just one of those guys, Portland is going to have to trade Harkless, Turner, or Myers Leonard. Either that, or they're going to have to get lucky and sign one of those guys for the taxpayer mid-level exception, which doesn't impose the hard cap. Either way, it's going to be very tough. In order to keep at least two of these guys, Portland will somehow have to find a way to trade Turner, Myers Leonard, and Maurice Harkless without getting much back at all. That would give them about $20 to $25 million in cap space, and then they could re-sign those guys for the cap room they create. Shedding all that salary would be very tough, and I'm not sure it would necessarily be the right move, as we'd likely have to give up at least one first-round pick, if not more, but you could possibly see something like Maurice Harkless and second-round picks for Taurean Prince, who could replace Maurice Harkless, do about just as good of a job for $8 million cheaper. So that is the fully broken down situation when it comes to re-signing Curry, Hood, and or Enes Kanter. So a couple questions from a couple weeks ago. Definitive One says, if you could add any player that was drafted within the last 2 years to this team, who would it be and why? And I would pick Jason Tatum, just because I think that dude still has the most potential out of anybody drafted in the last 2 years. I think that dude could be a top 5 or 6 player in the league. A lot of people won't agree with me on that, but that dude is such a smooth and skilled player, and he has so much room left to grow, and he's already a very good player. I think he could be the best from this past 2 years. He's in a dysfunctional situation in Boston right now, and he's had kind of a sophomore slump, but I think Jason Tatum would be a perfect fit next to Dame and CJ as a two-way player that can do stuff with the ball, that can shoot, that can space, that can attack the rim, and small forward is a position of need. Jack Vondenkamp says, what do you think is the most impressive thing that Dame has added to his game this year? I think it's his patience offensively and how he controls the pace of the game so effectively, and I've talked about this in previous videos. I also agree. He's in perfect control of the offense, and he is just playing with a great pace. He's playing at his own pace, he dictates the pace, and it's very impressive. I agree with you, that's the most impressive thing that he's developed in his game this year. He wasn't bad at it before, but now he's mastered it. Solar Money Yeet asks a question about getting Kevin Love in a trade this offseason, and I'm not a big Kevin Love fan. I'd rather have Blake Griffin. Kevin Love is more injury prone than Blake Griffin. He's a worse defender. Right now, he might not even be as good of a shooter, and that's the one thing that Kevin Love provides. I don't want to go for Kevin Love. He hurts our defense in the front court, and his spacing would be nice, but that's really all he would bring to the team other than good rebounding. I still think Al-Farouq Aminu is a better fit, even though he's not the better player by far. I just don't really want us to pursue Kevin Love. If we're going to try and add a star at that position, go for Blake Griffin. Connor McIntosh says, I don't think we will, but if we lost in the first round again this year and didn't make it a close series, do you think we should take a massive risk and make a massive move in the offseason? And I think we should do so even if we win. Next year is going to be our year. Nurkic comes back, I think he'll be 100%, and the Warriors, I think they won't be the same team. I think KD and DeMarcus Cousins will leave, and Houston will be another year older. I think that opens a spot for us if we can make the right moves to be able to be the top team in the Western Conference. So that's all I got for this Monday mailbag. I hope you enjoyed. Ask me a question down in the comment section below, and I will try and answer it next week. So that's all I got for now. This has been Tori. I'll see you True Blazer fans later. Peace out. Go Blazers.